Welcome to the October session of Lunch and Learn with Tony Woodard, Chief Inspector for the State Mechanical Program, and myself, Tom Hunt, with the Arkansas HVACR Association. Occasionally, we get a chance to move away from residential over into the realm of commercial, and today it's about multifamily stuff that we need to know. And it's awfully easy to think that residential and multifamily are exactly the same. However, they're not exactly the same, and that's where Tony began to find some problems across the state. Thought maybe we ought to cover them before they became a problem everywhere. So multifamily is different. Welcome, Tony, to this October session.
Thanks, Tom. How you doing?
It's a great day in the neighborhood.
It is. You're not visible for some reason.
Is that right? Well, that's
Yep.
probably it's probably a very good thing.
We hear you, but we just don't. I don't know. They may be able to see you. Maybe it's mine.
Anyway, our first slide. Can you see that?
I do. Yes, the
Good.
diddle
It's about
dryer
exhaust
exhaust.
for dryer and bath and kitchen. Jump on that one.
I will, and we're starting to get them to understand, I guess, on the difference between the flex connector versus the flex duct. And they were, a little confused on. They thought they could roll that flex connector out there 40 foot. That they're starting to learn the 14-foot rule on that requirement. You've got to get with your hard pipe till you can achieve your termination within the 14 foot. And I've had several calls lately about multi level when we're running the bath exhaust from first, second floor. Guys and gals, that's hard pipe. No ands, if, or buts. If we can't see it, it's hard pipe. So that's the easiest way to learn this. If it's under insulation, hard pipe, if it's visible, it can be the flex connector class 1, less than 14 feet or less. Now, I had a gentleman ask me, I've got a 100 CFM Braun fan. It had a 6-inch start collar. It had a takeoff on it, a 6-inch. It was a big one. Light. He said, can I run this 35-foot of flex connector? Flex duct. He had, he said, sure. There's no limit. Support it. It meets the ADC requirement, the 4-foot support. Get it up. The issue for ICC with this, where you're low and when you're coming from your transition from the starting collar or the start of that, make sure you don't kink that. That's where all of the clogs and the fires and everything started. It was sometimes they wouldn't install them and face them toward the eaves. They would turn them back rapidly. If that has to be going inward, put you a 90 mechanical elbow on there, then go with your flex duct. Even if you can bring it down, insulation be on it. And it was an insulated duct. And we've had some that have tried to common vent a couple. And if you go vertical, we're starting to learn up until the last week of August, if you start going out and you're going vertical with a lot of metal pipe, and it was 7-8 feet, and then it was rapidly, the cool air conditioned air from the conditioned bathroom was being drawn up into that pipe, into that hot, moist attic, and it was just raining back. Try to get that thing transition, getting it horizontal, getting it back going over, if all possible. I understand sometimes you can't do an eave or a soffit, and you got to go to the attic, but think about that. And that's where we're learning that the class 1 flex connector, once you get to the metal and you can get within 14 feet, it's taking care of a lot of that situation.
Well, I know that on the dryer, if you go over 35 equivalent feet, you've got to have a fan put in there. Is that true with the bath as well?
I'm gonna tell you, Tom, what we're learning. Some of these higher end houses are putting some pretty elaborate exhaust in there, and that's specifically per its manufacturer instruction of the footage it can push. I saw one that said it could push 70 foot, but it clearly said it would be a metal duct, not the flex connector. And they were specific on the climb, the grow, what they wanted and how they wanted it. Gibraltar, I believe, was the name of it. So it's grab those books. We don't know them. That's what we do as inspectors. We grab it and read it to try to educate ourselves on that. But our standard home that we're using, if it comes off with a 4-inch and we get the metal and then we can go to our flex connector and get to a soffit, we're not really having too much trouble.
Well, what I certainly hate to show my ignorance. What is a radiation damper?
Okay, ceiling radiation damper is nothing more. It's a butterfly like, or it'll be upside down like this, I guess. If I can get my finger. All right, and then the fuse link, and then it lays down. So where
Okay.
the drill is, if we have a fire situation, the radiation or smoke, it'll block that opening going up
Okay.
and through there. So if we have solid pipe, if we have a fire in there, it will withstand that for a time. What likes to happen in multifamily, we have a non-combustible boot, the lining's in it, really hard to burn, it takes a bit. But then once we get above that, we go to the flex duct. Flex duct can burn through rapidly. And then you can catch, so the ceiling radiation damper, if you decide to use a flex supply, that's required in multifamily.
Well,
That's
I
moving
have
on to ductwork. We're yeah. So
I have my opinions that aren't worth just a whole lot. I just don't understand. I
right.
don't understand why people would risk
Not
their
going metal.
homeowner and their occupant with anything less than the best. Okay. 602.2.1 materials within plenums.
Right. So our heating and air guys and gals, we get used to, we're from the norm where we get so used to single family dwelling that we have this exemption that when we do a pump and dump, pumping in the bottom with the return filter grill, going to a plenum, dumping out at the top, anything down in that one little volume of return is exempt for single family dwelling, our gas piping, our line sets, our drain lines, so forth. Like everything is exempt for that small volume area. Now, multifamily is not single family dwelling. 1 and 2 dwelling, period. Then everything else will have to meet this smoke development and flame spread. That's why we're having to get with them and try to isolate that, because they love to put the water heaters and the electrical and all that underneath, put the little units on the top. So that's the separation between single family dwelling and multifamily.
Okay.
And it must be plenum rated.
Okay, this is the exception you were just talking about, isn't
That's the exception. Yes, it will. Single family dwelling, you can go all day long. We're starting to see I'd say Rouse Coleman, and there's Cobblestone and another one that are building these. I'd say 1,400 square foot heritage type family where we still have a mechanical room down with a closet.
Mm-hmm.
But 80% of them, and I could be off on that. I just feel like 80% of the new dwellings are up in the attic now. And we get away with that because we have our metal supply and our metal return. This is really gearing towards that type of construction when we have the old closet and the half door and our filter grills.
Yeah. Okay, here's your picture. What are we seeing?
We are seeing a multifamily dwelling that has the back fan coil where, like these apartments, when you start getting into these ones that the Lindsay's and then they build the 1,000, they're buying these units, have them shipped in. So this is what we typically see in the multifamily dwelling. And this will be a filter slide in there. So we can use a grilled door, and we're isolating our return. So we can have the louver door at the bottom for air ventilation down here for our electric water heater, but all this underneath. Now, that room up there with that deal, that's going to be the return plenum. So we need that to meet that 2550. And the way they're doing this, it will. We're going to isolate return to where we're not drawing over Romex and PEX pipe and drain, waste, and vent, or floor drain and all that. We will separate the two areas, so our plenum area will be rated properly. When you go to a regular air handler in there, which wants to return out of the bottom, it starts getting tough, real tough, because now you're having to draw it out up under the water heater.
Here we go as a picture with the water heater in there already.
Right. So now this piece here, they're allowing this, okay? And the guy said, well, no, wait a minute. I said, they're allowing that. They're not allowing a total volume here, the open down in here, because you're going to filter right there. They're going to allow that little small PVC on the condensate right there with the float switch. So they'd slide their filter in right there. When they put their louvered door with their little board that comes in right here, it's not going to be 100% sealed, but it's an effort. They're making an effort to separate this non-plenum rated stuff out of the return area. So what Acamanual D and what ICC, what they have done, you have plenum duct, you have plenum rated area, you have plenum room. They've changed these definitions to give us a little bit of leeway. Say, okay, we will allow this drain line to have this little short, quick run, because you got to get it out of there. You got to have your float switches in there. Yeah. We got to give, and so on the front end, this was designed this way, and this is the way to do it.
Let's go to the next slide.
Okay.
Here we go. That's the door on that closet, right?
That'll be the door. And that's right. And then they put another little board in there. I need to get back. They're getting close to, they haven't occupied these. These are in Hot Springs. I need to get back and see if because that panel kind of hit and there's like a little indentation. I don't know if they're going to come back in there and put like a little foam, sealant or like weather stripping. I'm going to go back and see. But, this is a better attempt than what we're making an effort to where we're just not drawing everything out of that. We're trying to isolate the return from staying away from our devices in our Romex and things that they're deeming not plenum rated. So if that
what size units are these, Tony?
2 to there's some bigger apartments out there. There might be some 2.5s out there, but I think the majority is 1.5, 2 tons. But
the reason I asked that
pretty good size apartments out there though, so it could be some 2.5s.
The reason I was asking is to try to calculate the airflow through that wooden louver door there to see if they were actually getting enough air.
It was maxing out when we do the eddy current bounce off that wood. It was getting real maxed out at 2 tons.
I bet it was.
It was, and you know how it hits that door and it bounces, and then
the reason I even probably thought of that is because we are presently doing a series of classes across the state on Chapter 6 from the 2021 IMC. And that's a big issue of making sure you've got sufficient return air.
Well, I got me some pretty good education about paint. And I'll add that in there. A raw surface wood grill like that versus the painted, you gain. You're not as restricted. You get a little better flow through that. And I didn't even think about that. And they showed it to the enamel coating. So now we are starting to see something that's actually metal. They'll do this, and this is metal.
I see.
Help flow. But I never thought about that. I'm like, well, okay, that's a good point,
Well, it's not uncommon to see a grill have at least a 30% restriction. Right. So all of a sudden that changes your dimension in a hurry. Yeah. Here we go.
There you go. Yep. And then there's this board that seals to that. Oh, okay. Right up underneath there's where I'm not sure if they're going to do the gasket material or whatever. But yeah, the pop-offs and things, this is what we're and this drain, keeping that out. And we're doing a better, it's multifamily, but there's parts of the multifamily that are regulated by the IBC, and all of it is volume 1 fire code, all of it, because it's just so many occupants.
That has been one of the big revelations, epiphany to me, is how much we are regulated by the fire code. And it seems that a lot of the things that I hear you talking about has to do with the fire code. And it never really crossed my mind how critical a fire code was to the health and safety of residential and light commercial. Yeah,
that's a good point. I was trying to read one of these chap things. I lost focus there on it. It says, is drain trapped due to negative pressure? Well, drains will be trapped per manufacturer's instructions. I guess he's seeing the trap down here coming in there. And I question to answer that. I would actually have to look at that manufacturer's instruction to see if it requires. It is pulling through a little. But traps are strictly, when we go to our code, they're strictly you have to go by a manufacturer's instruction. Our code doesn't say it's mandatory with trap, just that's at 304. And if I didn't blow that picture up, but if they require it on the instructions, then it has to be there.
Gotcha. Very important.
Oh, yes. The rigid duct. We're had a lot of calls on this one, and I'm glad. It reached out to a lot of folks, and they weren't aware. And I said, well, that's why we do these. We're here to help, and that's they were letting them go through. And no, sir, I mean, it's a good deal. So everybody, if it's a floor wall ceiling, it's metal. It's metal all the way through. So I think these things are working, Tom. These lunch and learns are helping.
Yeah. I had a person in one of our meetings. In fact, it was a Tuesday night up in Fort Smith that said he watched the last one on Flex, and he brought all of his guys together to watch it. And they then went out to a house that already was an existing construction, already had Flex duct, and they looked at it and more or less said, "Oh my goodness," because the Flex was really compressed. And he stretched it out like it was supposed to be and reduced the static by 50% just by that.
And field experience work. I love that. That's awesome. So, hey, they believe it from now on. Look at that. Okay, it really and it's think about your own house. What if my house is like that? I mean, yeah, that's awesome. Good. There was one more chat question asked. Was that a fire? No, that is not. That would be treated like your inside corridor. That door does not have to be. No, sir.
That last point in metal, in red down there is interesting because I can see where you might have like a bonus room over a garage.
Yes. We see a lot of that where they penetrate up there with the Flex. Absolutely. That's a good point. And that's where we see a bunch of them when they're using zone systems. They'll go to a zone system and run that Flex up there and that, nope. Can't do it.
It's got to be metal. If it's in that garage, it's got to be 26 gauge.
Yes, sir. Good point.
All right. What am I looking at here, Tony?
What you're looking at there, so the plenum so there's that cavity. So what you're going to see on the next picture, you're going to see one of the ducts, the big 12 inch. They're going to come out of this plenum on one side with supply and go to that radiation depth because they really, if this would have been all metal streamline, this could have went away. We could have, but they didn't carry the plenum up into the cavity. This could have been 26 gauge, gone up in there. We could have caulked around that, would have been okay, and then took our supplies above the horizontal assembly out. Well, they're penetrating it now. They did 2 penetrations. So now, even though we're protecting that now down here, and this is going to go up and one's going to turn and go to this level. The second one's going to go up. There you go, going up to the next level. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes,
so that's
sir.
where it came through.
That's where it came through, and this is going to get boxed in, and that's going to go up to the next level. This is a townhouse.
Gotcha. There it is, I guess.
There you go. There you go. So there's your mechanical room. This metal done this way, not Flex duct.
So their plan before you got there was to take here and tie in and use that as a plenum, wasn't it?
If they had the room, yeah, and they're going to bring elbows down and tie into this.
Yeah.
210. If they had the room, the plenum, but I just don't. It's covered up before I got there, Tom. But from what I'm looking at, and there's sprinkler heads to the right over there. They just didn't have the room. I think once we got to some others, they were able to adjust that and get up in there and then go horizontal with their trunk.
I see. All right. What are we looking at? Is that a garage?
Okay, so what I would like, if anybody'd like to call me and tell me what is right about, and I'll even give you this one. Start with the control for the garage opener. Tell me what is right in that job. There's not what's wrong. I want you to tell me what's right in that job. Because that is there's Flex duct penetrating in the garage of all the only rated areas we have in a single family dwelling. We do not have any clearance to our water heater expansion tank over there. We don't have shutoffs we can't get to the water. Or over here we were trying to find where the disconnect is because it's back on the other side. There's no pan underneath this thing. He doesn't have his little control wires not even through the plate properly. But I was just like, the guy sent that to me and he said, "Now, is that right?" And I said, "I don't know how to answer that question for you because I don't see anything that is right." So he's like, "Oh, but that's in my. I saved that one. That's a good one right there." But I believe we got these all corrected.
Well, that's good. That's good.
See, there was no plenum on there, Tom. I don't know if you can go back. There was no return plenum whatsoever. 2 foot, people, 2 foot minimum, 2 foot minimum return plenum. Then you can go out. Okay.
Well, If you've got questions or compliments or complaints about code stuff, call 501-682-9201. I think you will find that there is no other regulatory agency in the world that's more concerned about helping the people they regulate to do things right. You know, I think frequently people have the idea that inspectors are out there trying to catch you and beat you down. That is not the case with our state inspectors. Every one of them will meet with you and talk about how you need to do to make it right. And then we'll come back later on to see if you've actually got it done. Now, when you don't do it, after that, yeah, you may have some problems and you may feel like you're being mistreated. But boy, you're being given an opportunity to serve your customer right the first time, or at least the second time. So anyway, that's the number to call. Well, Tony, I appreciate you. Appreciate the whole
Hey, Tom, I
department.
appreciate it. There was one more chat I want to answer. There was
Yeah,
a gentleman
okay.
that asked, should that, where we went down to the pan drain, the water drain, and all going down, he said, should that be trapped? If that is sewer, if that's tied into the drain, waste, and sewer, yes, it should be trap guard. That's a
Okay.
good question. I'm under this understanding that that was all storm tied in just for condensate. I think they had designed those. It was back in the back. Those right there, I believe, all tied together just for condensate. I don't know that for 100%. That's a good question. If that is in the sewer, absolutely. That would have to have the trap guard and be protected from sewer gas being drawn into the apartment. Very good question. Very good question.
Very good. Anyway, we'll be back with you again in another month on November the 13th. More lunch and learn. And I'm so grateful that we get to do these every month. It's a lot of fun. I learn a lot. Thanks a bunch. We'll see you next month. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you, Tom.